And it's going to be, Jody, it is going to be a disaster at some point when it happens in a big game. Obviously, if it happens in Philadelphia, it'll affect us greater. But
Johnny Mac and Jody Mac here with you on Birds 365. Yes, the Eagles are back in action on Sunday after the bye week, which thank you, Phillies, for keeping us all entertained during a down week in the Eagles schedule. They'll be back in action. Sunday's going to be a tough day. But the World Series doesn't start till 8:03 at night. So the Eagles, good thing they're playing.
Man, those games are late. Ugh, I forgot. Yeah.
8:03 start time Eastern, which they could have. And again, it all comes down to scheduling in advance. They set the dates for the World Series. They probably set the time for the World Series as well. There's no West Coast team. If there's a West Coast team, then you actually do have to do some balancing. There's not. It's an Eastern team and a Central time zone team. They could start this game at anywhere between 7 and 7:30 and just make it a little bit more doable on a Sunday night or whenever they're going to have the game during the week when the kids are in school. It is a little bit unfortunate. But the Eagles play Sunday at 1. John McMullen's favorite time to cover the National Football League.
Yes.
The Steelers coming to town. And, yeah, I didn't think the Steelers were going to be very good this year, but they've been really bad. Even Sunday night, and, I'm a Tua guy, and Tua made a couple of nice passes, but Tua made some bad throws. There was rust on Tua. He did not play exceptionally well.
Well, yeah. I mean, he hasn't played for a while. And, by the way, still hasn't been – now that you brought up Tua, because still hasn't been diagnosed with that second concussion, no matter how many people say it. I brought up Amon-Ra St. Brown getting tossed from the game because of the new rule, and he showed motor instability. No concussion. Hurt his foot, hurt his ankle, little instability for a second. Completely fine. It's not the official's fault. He saw instability, sent him off the field, out. Can't come back in the game. Dumb rule, overreaction, unintended consequence. Nobody cares. I get it. But if that happens in a big game, Jody, with a big player, wait till you see what's coming.
Since we're talking theoretical or hypothetical, let it be A.J. Brown here in an Eagle game when they're still undefeated, and he gets up a little unstable midway through the first quarter, and then he's sitting for 3.5 more quarters because he took a bad step after making a catch or having a pass defended against him. Oh, yeah, we're Birds 365. Yes, we talked a lot about Justin Fields in hour number 1. We like to think we can talk about the entire National Football League, but this is Eagle country, and where people are worried that people that are listening right now are Eagle fans. It better not happen to the Eagles because they will scream bloody murder. Your point is dead on that it's an accident waiting to happen. It's not big a deal because good wide receiver on a bad team in a game that people weren't paying that much attention to. All right, well, maybe he's a Cowboy, so some people are paying attention to it. But if it's a big game and an Eagle game specifically here in town, it's got a chance to really catch the attention of the fans.
You can't develop policy based on social media reaction. I wish I could shake somebody in the NFL office, use some common sense. These are independent neurologists. I mean, if somebody's got information that says that some independent neurologist from North Carolina, wherever the heck he was from, is trying to skew things Miami's way and wants 2 on the field because he's bet on the game, that's the biggest scandal in the history of mankind. To my knowledge, that has not happened. He was never diagnosed with a concussion. The independent neurologist did nothing wrong, and they changed the policy anyway because of what happened in the future, which nobody can judge. And it was a very scary scene, but it had nothing to do with the first scene. People can't connect that. And certainly experts can't connect that. So you're down this wormhole, and it's going to be, Jody, it is going to be a disaster at some point when it happens in a big game. Obviously, if it happens in Philadelphia, it'll affect us greater. But if it happens in the playoffs anywhere, and then that similar thing happens where, think about a quarterback. If he's taken off the field, you go back to the playoff game against Seattle, and Carson Wentz was concussed, legitimately concussed, called it one of the scariest moments of his life, and fans were upset that he took himself out of the game, If you have a non-diagnosed concussion and a quarterback leaves a game, oh boy, because you're telling the officials, and again, it wasn't the officials' fault. He stumbled. He stumbled because he hurt his ankle or his foot or whatever. And he just saw the stumble. And he said, all right, instability, get him off the field. And it's done. It's over.
Here's the one place your argument and the way you laid it out was perfect. Here's where I'll give the NFL a little more credit than I think you do. I really don't think they make these moves or have these reactions because of social media. I think it's a little bit more mainstream media. And if you want me to name names, I'll give you Peter King. I'll give you Shannon Sharp on Fox. I'll give you Michael Irvin on ESPN. I think they are very well aware what's being said about their game and how they're refereeing it from guys who they deem as respectable, move the needle with the NFL fan base type guys. I don't think because Dominic Dabney, and I'm just reading the name off our stream here, said the NFL is a joke. How can
fair enough? Fair enough. You're right, but You're right, of course. I don't mean at goofball 976 on Twitter, but I think they have a great effect. I know you're right about Peter King and his reputation. I don't know what word you want to use. If you want to use progressive, if you want to use liberal, if you want to use whatever word you feel more comfortable with, that's Peter. Good or bad, that's Peter. And I do think, people in my industry are affected a lot by social media. So maybe it's a step away. Maybe you're right. But the NFL has to realize this. Look, this is a very dangerous sport. Everybody knows it. Everybody signs off to play it. I've said this from this because it's a very difficult subject, and it's a very new science, and there's still not a lot of information, and people won't admit that. And instead of tackling that head on and trying to educate people, the NFL is just trying to shield, as they usually do, used facetiously a little bit, and just try to hide and take the easiest route. It's difficult to educate people. It's very, very difficult. But if an independent neurologist, you're going through all these hoops and you've done all this, and he says, look, there's no concussion here by the available evidence, you got to stand by that guy. And the NFLPA as well, by the way, because they're part of this, a big part of this.
Not only did they not buy what you said, they turned around and fired his rear end.
Yeah, exactly. Because why? Because it's easier. It's easier. Education is harder. So you're right. I probably didn't phrase it correctly, but I do think social media has a huge impact on people in my industry, in your industry. Some more than others, to be honest, but it has this wave that can turn people in certain directions, and then it becomes a unintended consequence, which is what we have here, and we've already seen it. It's 2 weeks old. We've already seen it. We've already seen the impact of not allowing the experts to do their jobs, because you can send Amon St. Brown off the field, no issue. Send him off the field, then let the doctors do their work and they could say, no, he hurt his he hurt his ankle, he hurt his foot. We did the impact testing. There's no concussion. Clear him, get him back on the field. You can no longer do that.
Right.
And that was common sense. So common sense does not win the day.
There's got to be a middle ground position here that the NFL hasn't figured out just yet. And shame on them. I'm with you. Overreaction, lose a guy for an entire game, actually, absolutely can almost dictate the outcome of the game depending on the magnitude of the player. But they don't want to face the wrath of, I would say media over social media if they have another Tua type situation. They're managing their game scared, which I don't think you can do in the National Football League, and you shouldn't be doing in a physical game. Everybody knows ahead of time it's a physical game, and guys are going to take shots. If not, then go play flag football. But if you still have tackling and wear helmets, stuff's going to happen, and you got to be able to deal with it and roll with it. All right, before we get Clark Judge up here, with the Steelers coming to town, they will not go into tank mode for one very specific reason. They never do.
No.
We've seen Carolina trade off their best player. Would not be surprised if other teams follow suit this week and just say, we're not making the playoffs this year. We're going to get draft assets and the like. You don't think Pittsburgh's going to go down that road if the Eagles clean their clock come Sunday? You don't think on Monday the Steelers will be moving off any of their players, do you? You mentioned Claypool earlier. Do you really think there's anything to that?
Yeah, I do, but I think that's more of kind of been a horse's what at times than very talented player. And I don't, Ed brought up they should have drafted Jalen Hurts. I mean, I don't think they're disappointed in Chase Claypool's talent. I think they're disappointed in maybe some of the other things, but so you can always trade guys from that standpoint. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season, doesn't want to have a losing season. No, I can't see them going fire sale, even if they get blitzed by the Eagles. What they are going to do, evidently, is allow Kenny Pickett to go through the growing pains. And maybe that helps down the road, if they evaluate it correctly. A little surprised they're going to him this early. Everybody's still in it because there's so few good teams. If you're not in the NFC East or the AFC East,
true in that division.
Yeah, you're still in it. Everybody in the entire league except for two divisions. So no, I don't think there's going to be any kind of fire sale. I don't even know why there's a fire sale in Carolina because they're in it. PJ Walker's giving them some life. Our old Temple friend, tongue in cheek a little bit. They're not going to win anything, but they were trying, and even they're not trying to trade Brian Burns. If you want to give them 2 first-round picks and give them the King's ransom, they might consider it because they know they're not ready to win. But in the case of McCaffrey, he's an injury-prone player who makes a lot of money, and they're that makes sense. Robbie Anderson, Robbie's one of those guys that people fall in love with because he can run, but he's just not that good of a receiver. The Jeremy Chins of the world, who I think is still on IR, the Brian Burns of the world, you still got to build with certain players. I mean, even teams that are not ready, they still got to build.
Did I ever tell you my PJ Walker story for my daughter?
I do. I don't believe so.
She's a communications major at Temple, and she's in the same class as the Temple quarterback. And they got broken off into groups to do a group project. So I think it was 5 in a group. They had 20 people in the class. So 4 groups of 5 people apiece. And Maddie gets assigned to be in Walker's group. But someone else was the group leader. So she was giving out the responsibility. She gave Maddie hers and the next person, and then gave out the responsibilities to Philip. And no one knew who Philip was. But the girl who knows nothing about football, who's running the group, is just going down a list of names here.
Philip.
And Philip, we need you to do this. And everyone's like, look, who's Philip? Who the hell is? Oh, you're talking about PJ, the quarterback. The girl who leading the group had no idea who PJ Walker was. He was just Philip on a sheet of paper. And when my daughter told me that story years ago, I laughed out loud. So, yes, I will be rooting for Philip Walker, the newest quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, just because he's a Temple guy. And he won last week. He got the better of a guy we know full well.
How about that?
For the fact that
he can always, PJ is going to be telling that story to his grandchildren one day. You can guarantee that. That's a pretty big win for a young quarterback.
Ed Kratz forgot that Brady guy was a Big Ten quarterback. So,
well, he lost his job, which tells you about college football. He lost his job at Michigan to Brian Griese at one point. So,
here's what makes. I think you were with me on this, but you don't want to chop your guy head off at the knees. Where they played college football is irrelevant. Joe Burrow couldn't make it in the Big Ten, but he goes to the SEC and wins a Heisman.
Josh Allen played at Stick in Wyoming.
Which can't get or develop quarterbacks, couldn't develop Joe Burrow, but he goes to the SEC and has one of the greatest collegiate years ever in the history of the National Football League.
Again,
where a guy played, what conference he was
in. And that's what literally day one of scouting school. Never scout the helmet. Trust me, Wyoming doesn't have a history of great quarterbacks. And then Josh Allen comes along.
Yeah. Give me the previous Wyoming standout quarterback in the NFL. Oh, shoot, can't draft Josh Allen because there's never been a Wyoming quarterback before.
Carson Wentz at North Dakota State, becoming the now people saying that.
John, how many times did I have to field calls on? Oh, Joe Burrow's at LSU, and LSU has not developed a quarterback. Are you kidding me? Yeah, you're gonna pass on that guy. 400 and how many yards this week? 481 for Burrow. But there were people that LSU's never developed. Oh God, why can't I think of the kid who went number one? The LSU big kid.
Jamarcus Russell.
Jamarcus Russell. What a bust he was. Therefore, you can't take Joe Burrow because Jamarcus Russell was Jamarcus Russell. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my entire life.
No, I'm with you. And I even with, like I say it all the time, even with David Carr and Derek Carr. David Carr hurt Derek Carr. It's dumb. It's very dumb.
Right. You got to evaluate the individual. All right. We will evaluate Clark Judge from Talk of Fame Network is scheduled to join us next. We've had Clark on the show a couple times. Always good whenever he hops aboard. We're looking to punch him up next here on Birds 365.